And by the way, oh, okay, so you are recording. I saw that several people asked if the recording will be available. So yes, sure. I'm so excited, honestly, to share this research. It took over 4 years, and it started as a personal journey. I did not intend, I did not know it's going to be a dissertation coming out of this, but as I was so interested, curious, and open about this topic, it kind of turned into a deeper endeavor. And I have some slides to share with you. It will be easier to discuss. So a few slides, I'll do a slide share, so give me a moment. 1 second. So what started as a personal random observation of my own inspiration moments turned later into a full dissertation. I was fascinated about this phenomena, and as I went deeper into it, I found that it's not just something random that people often think of inspiration as something not even having no relationship to a person coming out of nowhere and disappearing. Something that muses whisper into our ears, as Greek poets and philosophers said long ago. So I looked into different layers of meaning of this phenomena, and my topic, dissertation topic, is a mindful inquiry into the meaning of individual inspiration in a period of personal challenge. And there is a lot to discuss about this topic. I will try to touch on some key points, and if anyone will be interested later on and would want to see me again for a deeper dive, we can always do it. The dissertation turned to be quite a big one, around 300 pages, and if anyone will be later interested to look at that, obviously I can share once it's published in the ProQuest dissertation database. It's been submitted just end of last week, so soon should be published. And I'm also planning to publish a book on this, because already have multiple requests from colleagues and friends who want to see this in a more readable, non-academic format. So there is that keen interest from people to this topic. So what I was, when I was deep diving on the inspiration, I found like some of fascinating findings, where that this phenomena seems to support and facilitate human consciousness evolution, which came as a big surprise to me. And it's kind of like a shortcut I'm giving to you. You may not see this path right now, but indeed, I found this a gift of a phenomena, like one of the key phenomena in our human life, supporting our development and evolution. And there is a lot in this phenomena. When I did my literature review, and later when I interviewed people, I found that it cannot be explored from any single academic field of research. There is definitely research in psychology, in a psychological field on inspiration. There is something in research on creativity. There is something on inspirational leadership. There is something in philosophical literature. But to see a more system view of inspiration, I had to kind of integrate, synthesize key ideas from these different fields, which was challenging to me, because I am not a philosopher, not a psychologist, not a spiritual or theologian. But you know, you can do wonders if you're really interested about something, and if you employ academic rigor and different research tools. So from a deeper philosophical and spiritual standpoint, the inspiration holds a paradox. It's about a tension of form and being. And I don't know if you will be able to touch on this, but it's a wonderful paradox, and actually this tension of form and being opened for me the essence of this phenomena. But let's look into my own map of inspiration journey, and that's one of the findings of this research, that inspiration is not an episode, is not just a moment, because it used to be a lens in an academic field in various research areas, that inspiration is just a moment, and often been looked and analyzed as just a moment. And that's what I did. I was fascinated by inspiration, and I was collecting my moments. I was writing them down. I was surprised about some of these moments, and I later, when I accumulated more than a dozen of such moments, I kind of created a map, wanted to understand what is that, what is in this inspiration. I clearly saw in these various moments more than just a whisper of muses, because whisper of muses was one of my default understanding of inspiration coming from long ago when I attended fine arts school when I was a child. But I never gave another thought to it. I thought inspiration is purely something that attributed to gifted or creative people. And then I start seeing inspiration in other moments, that only in creativity or arts or dance or anything like that. One of my fascination about inspiration was, I remember, with that element of energy coming out of inspiration experience. And I remember it probably was one of my first episodes which really caught me and put me on a path of the deeper inquiry. I remember I came from work. It was the end of the week. I was tired, exhausted. I was working in finance, corporate finance, for a number of years, and very exhausting field. And I remember I came and I had no life energy. I literally just was laying on the couch, and I thought, that's it, life is so miserable. What can I do? I cannot do anything with me, and even less for my family. And somehow I got to reading something. I was working on my PhD work with a group, and I got into some post with my peers, and I got the sense of inspiration. Something caught me, and I remember, like, within like 30 minutes of being totally exhausted, I was bursting with energy. I was literally jumping around my house, and I paid attention to this, and I was fascinated. I was like, okay, I was just dying 30 minutes ago, and now I am bursting with energy. This is amazing. I want to explore this. I am clearly inspired. So inspiration holds this potential. And so I was inspired by the energy component. That's how it started. And I also noticed that I have deeper embodied, like a physical symptoms or somatic symptoms of inspiration, which rarely was discussed anywhere in the literature when I later reviewed the literature in more depth. So I started collecting these patterns, and I found connection to inspiration in dance and movement. I found connection to inspiration in dreams. I found I had inspiration experience with release of tears and crying. I had a very deep mystical and transcendent experience in Peru later on, and a different and deeper understanding of inspiration. And after that, when I mapped all my experiences, I understood that this is not a random thing, that this is a journey, that there was something in this inspirational experiences that was kind of grabbing my attention, almost like a message was communicated through these various experiences. And when I consulted the literature, I found a note in one researcher noted that we're not inspired by random things. There's always something that grabs a specific person attention, and surprisingly, people are inspired in different ways. What inspire me may not inspire you, and vice versa. So he said that we inspired by something that touches on our deep values in meaning structures. And here's later on, through this connection with values and meaning structures, when I interviewed people, I clearly got confirmation through their stories that those were not random moments, but there was connection with their deeper values and meaning structures. And through those changes in values and meaning structures, it led to the maps of human consciousness evolution, because knowing about stage theories of human consciousness evolution, I knew that those clearly showed the changes in people values and meaning structures, or how they create meaning when they evolve from one stage to another. To give you a taste of what different layers of meaning can be hidden in inspiration experience, I'm gonna share with you my last one about the creative flow experience, which had multiple manifestations and layers of meaning. So to give you a picture of that, here's what it looked like. And this happened randomly, like out of the blue. I did not paint anything for a long time. I used to study fine arts when I was a child, but since I went into finance, I literally didn't do anything. And about a year ago, I felt an urge to paint, like to draw something. And I grabbed a piece of paper and started drawing. And while I was drawing, I caught myself in this flow state, being inspired, being drawing something and creating poetry, and in the same time singing to it. And here's this drawing that I did, and the poetry that went along with it. And while I was drawing this, I started drawing a trunk of a tree and having no clue what was gonna be later. And then I drew eyes. And I felt like this trunk of a tree was merging into eyes. But later on, when I felt this poetry, I felt that this picture has some connection with me. The poetry that I created, I'm just gonna read it to you so you get a feeling of it. I am a tree of potentiality. I am a tree. Don't ever try to define me. Don't try to reduce me to a sum of my branches and leaves. You will never grasp me in my totality. You will try to stereotype me, categorize me, and prescribe how I should grow and be. You always want me reduced to a precise box that you can label and measure. But can you put the universe in the box? Can you define creative life force? Can you measure eternity? So this painting, it was basically, I did it at the start of my dissertation process. And at this moment, I felt like this tree is explaining who I am in that moment of life, that I cannot put myself into any box. I am not a finance professional. I am not a PhD, a scholar, or any other boxes that we often try to put ourselves in or other people in. I understood through this tree that there was a communication. There is always a unity of the blank space of potential that we often cut from ourselves when we title ourselves with a precise title or definition, when we only see ourselves through specific lens. And this tree was almost an invitation to consider myself and others through a unity, almost a yin and yang, from that which already manifested and that which is still a potential. And I remember when I was drawing this tree, as a former finance and perfectionist, I I intended to complete the full tree with all the leaves, all the branches and everything. And in the middle of this experience, I felt a sense of, you did your job, stop, it's already done. And I felt inside, how do I feel? And I felt in harmony and stopped. And when later I was thinking about this experience, I realized that it totally makes sense. This half-completed tree presentation as myself and as others, we always half completed. I mean, as a metaphor, because our potential is not yet fully manifested. It's an invitation to step into this dynamic of form and being. We always have this being that is not yet captured in any form, and it can be anything, literally, if we only start seeing this field and unite what is and what can be. So this, I just shared some of my experiences, and it's very brief share, but anyone who is interested to know more about the full journey, I have it in my dissertation with more examples and deeper examples and analysis. When I looked at the literature on inspiration, it looked at the phenomena through basically 4 lenses. Inspiration as something physiological, somatic, through breathing, emotions, and energy. In a spiritual lens, looked at inspiration connection with spirit as a universal life force. Mystical lens looked at inspiration as something that is an influence of a deity or unknown force. And cognitive psychological lens, which is dominant in the literature, looks at inspiration as a mental process, as an insights, a transfer of knowledge, or influence of others. And as I already mentioned, inspiration often conceptualized as state or moment or episode. There is a process view of inspiration as an attract view of inspiration. What I expanded deeper in my study happened to be a process view of inspiration. And later on, I will show you what the results were. So my research question in this study was, what is the meaning of an inspiration experience during a time of personal challenge? Why personal challenge? When I looked through the literature, I found an interesting comments in several research, deeper phenomenological research studies, mentioning that people commented on often being inspired while they went through struggle or challenge or crisis. And it kind of made sense to me that inspiration literally means that something was out of normal before, that the person were not in spirit, not connected in spirit. And one researcher said, yes, people said that inspiration came out of a state of dispiritedness. And I also noticed when I observed my moments of inspiration that they were kind of arising often from situations of challenge. And I decided to explore this much deeper, and I thought, I am not alone. I can interview other people about their experience of challenge and inspiration and see, are there any patterns that these people noticed? Maybe there's something that is resonant with my experience. And to go deeper into this phenomena, I realized that it has to be looked not as just experience of inspiration. It's not something that is imposed on the person. I realized that it has connection to a person. And inspiration, literally, as I understood, only arises in a context of personal life world struggles and development. Without the person, there is no inspiration. So when we talk about inspiration, we mean personal individuals. That's often what we mean when we talk about inspiration. Inspiration and spirit or spirituality has etymological connection, and this is quite often in the literature is omitted or not explored deeply. The concept of spirit is either tabooed or only considered in relation to theology, field of theology, religion, philosophy. And there is a connection between person and spirit, which a basis or has been a basis for various religious and spiritual paradigms. So on the intersection on these three bigger fields, I looked into the deeper connections to what this phenomena may show. After I completed my literature review, this what came to be as my working definition of inspiration. Inspiration is a life-affirming process that transcends perceived limitation of the ordinary state of consciousness and boundaries between various levels of self, allowing to access the deeper psyche or the soul, higher self, true self, authentic self, and spirit, and facilitates ontological and epistemic shift in being and knowing. So this definition is kind of very complex and possibly will be difficult for you to understand because it's a result of almost 60 or 70 pages of literature review and synthesis between various fields. And the difficulty processing and synthesizing this information between fields for me was that all these fields use different concepts, different names, and I had to bridge some of them to see that there is a connection, that whatever is called true self in another literature is called the soul or authentic self, or some other names, and make sense of it. So I'm just giving to you so you can see that inspiration as a phenomena has much deeper layers and connections to various bodies of literature, philosophical, spiritual, psychological systems, and others. And here is my last slide, and this is the pattern, the cyclical pattern that was a result of the study based on the interviews of 8 people and my own story, so 9 people in total. This was in-depth study, so I can consider each of the interview I did with each person as a separate case. We went through different episodes of inspiration, and I was very blessed and lucky that people who came to this study, because I realized later that if these people were not open to share to the depths and extent that they shared with me, the study may not have been as rich as it ended up to be. But I was very blessed that those who work with me, and John, thank you for your work and support, opened up to some depths that maybe they didn't realize in their stories, and we were able to see that inspiration is going beyond an episode, that it has a cyclical pattern. So what I noticed initially in my experiences were reconfirmed in participant stories, and we found that there are some common themes, and everything started with a paradigm or mental models, and it kind of was a I did not expect that, but it kind of made sense in the end. And here's 8 steps. So it goes through tension that we accumulate while we live in those paradigms, when we split from ourselves quite often, until we realize that there is a split, that there is a congruence challenge. And then quite often we run into the situation of challenges, deep challenges that may open up to reconsider those paradigms, open up to different experiences. And while we're in those experiences, we may encounter what I called a mirror, or a person that, like a mirror, reflects ourselves in this other. And we may encounter a deeper connection, a resonant connection that can propel us to a different state of consciousness, different expanded awareness. And in this expanded awareness, people were talking about the moment of truth, the moment of recognition, often a recognition of a deeper truth, deeper values as they held, deeper stories that were untold or suppressed before. And through this moment of challenge and inspiration and the recognition of a deeper hidden truth came liberation and empowerment, and something shifted in a person. And often the shift was not immediate. Quite often people talked about many experiences about the same message, kind of reinforcing that message and facilitating or helping to facilitate that shift so the person could grow to a next level of consciousness or values, or next level even professionally, or whatever goals they had before. And all of this needed some kind of integration, integration into personal life, professional life, and yes, helping to actually not to lose the sight and gifts and ideas coming out of inspirational experiences. So with this, I will move us into discussion, and for discussion, I and John came up with this question. If you recall some of your most memorable inspirational moments, do you recognize in them any patterns or deeper layers